Well, Rotherham United were relegated with a whimper from the Championship, much like their 16-17 ill-fated campaign. But it looks like there won't be any hangover for the Millers, in theory, because straight after relegation was confirmed, the club have acted to appoint Steve Evans, reappoint, should I say, because Evans won back-to-back promotions with the Millers in the mid-2010s, and has since had a successful managerial career in the EFL, winning promotion in 2023 with Stevenage before steering the well-organised borough to a 9th placed finish in League One. That's where Rotherham are hoping to be competitive at the top this season, and as after an early recruitment drive, there is a bit of optimism coming back to this corner of South Yorkshire. Is that optimism justified? And can Rotherham be among the promotion frontrunners? That's what we're going to discuss on this Summer Deep Dive. Yes, welcome along to the latest EFL Debate Summer Deep Dive, one of 72 we're doing club by club across the EFL between mid-June and mid-July. Already the full set for League Two uploaded to YouTube and Spotify, as well as a few already for League One, so go and check those out. Once you're done with this one, for now, delighted to be joined by Matt Lax from the New York Talk Rotherham United podcast. Good evening, Matt. Thanks for your time. Really appreciate it. Do you think the Rotherham, based on the appointment of Steve Evans and the recruitment we've seen so far, are in a good position to bounce back at the first time of asking?
Should be. Well, we should be in a good position, should I say. It's a big summer in terms of turnover. I think, including the loan players, I think we've lost 18 players this summer. That includes Victor Anson and Peter Curso, who have left, who were in contract. The rest were loans and out-of-contract players. So it looks like we've been really, really busy, but it was completely necessary. This is not Steve Evans. This isn't a Steve Evans scattergun approach like it can be at times, like it was last time for us. This was needed. This was necessary. And look, we're not there. I think Steve Evans says there's 2 or 3. I would say maybe 5 or 6 probably needed. But there's a positive vibe as soon as they come in. There's questions about Steve Evans. It wasn't universally loved, the reappointment, but as soon as he come in, there is just an air of difference about the club. Those 3 games he came in, there was a difference. Certainly, the last game of the season, which we won, was brilliant. So there is an air of positivity around the football side of things. I mean, absolutely,
certainly is. I think as much as I have a lot of respect for what Leam Richardson has done in his career, and he's proven in the past to be an excellent League One manager, I think had he stayed in charge, it would have felt more like a rebuilding campaign and maybe difficult to have seen Rotherham challenging, whereas I do think the appointment of Steve Evans does give them a bit more ambition possibly to go into this season with. So with that in mind, Tony Stewart, Matt, I think the sort of common consensus with Tony Stewart and the running of the club is there's a debt of gratitude owed to him for what he's done in the past, and the fact that he continues to run the club as somebody who cares passionately about Rotherham United, and both those things deserve a huge amount of respect. Is there still a feeling, despite the investment that we've seen this summer, that the club is going to need new owners at some point down the line if it wants to meet its long-term ambitions?
If you want to meet long-term ambitions, which is eventually be a solid championship team, then personally, yes, I think that is the case. I think Tony Stewart has taken us as far as he possibly can, and he's done amazing. Look, like you've mentioned, then he's built this brand new stadium, one of the most sustainable football clubs in the country. It deserves a lot of credit. But last season, off the field, was, I can't think of another word than shambles. The 4-week wait after Matt Taylor got sacked to them appointing Leam Richardson massively contributed to the relegation, so that sucked away a lot of credit that it had in the bank. The fans forum last night, where there wasn't much, not credit's not the right word, but for last season, what happened last season, Tony Stewart didn't take responsibility, Rob Scott didn't take responsibility, so there is concerns for me that is this going to happen again? When Steve Evans leaves in 2 years' time, 3 years' time, where does the club sit? Tony Stewart suggested that he'll probably move down to his son. He intimated that last night. So I don't think there's any plans to sell. And Tony Stewart being the man he is, I think he'll hold on for as long as he possibly can. But he's not as wealthy as everybody else. He mentioned the fans from last night that he put £2 million extra in last summer, which for us as normal people, and I'm sure for Tony Stewart, is a lot of money. But what's £2 million in Championship nowadays?
Yeah,
it's not really that much money. So I think if we are realistic about taking the next step, then he would need to sell. But I just can't see that happening, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Do you think I'm going to approach this from a slightly more cynical angle here? That is there a fact he's not taken responsibility for relegation last season? Do you think there's an extent to which reappointing Steve Evans and going for this early recruitment drive is a way of maybe deflecting a little bit from taking responsibility? Because it's like, look at what's happening here. So don't look at what's happened last season. Look at this. Do you think there's an element of that there, or am I being a bit too cynical there?
I think there's certainly a part of that. And I think one thing, again, Steve, you can say a lot about Steve Evans, but one thing Steve Evans is good at is getting his own fans on side. He knows what to say, he knows how to say it. In interviews, every single interview you listen to, if you're a Rotherham fan or a fan of Stevenage, when you were a Stevenage fan or whatever, you just lap it up. It's what you want to hear. He's a great manager for PR. So, and also the fact he trusts him from last time helps. They talked about how good friends they are. Again, that brings up a concern. Can you work as chairman and manager if you're so good friends? Is he going to get much more leash than somebody else might going forward? But I think the signings are Steve Evans being Steve Evans. I think he's seen Jonson Clarke-Harris, for example. He's available. Right, I'm going to go get him because he's proven. Joe Rafferty, he's proven. I'm going to go get him. But Steve Evans knows how to work Tony Stewart, and that then helps the sort of PR side of things, which we needed. To be fair, I know it is a bit cynical, but the club needed that lift.
Yeah,
it needed something, because last season was just the most soul-destroying season I can remember.
Yes, I can imagine. I can imagine that. And actually, I think in terms of the relationship between Tony Stewart and Steve Evans, I would say that's a net positive. I do take your point about a manager and a chairman being two close friends, but I think also I would probably, on balance, want the manager and chairman to have that sort of connection, because I would say that's a net positive. But it's an interesting one. So you've reappointed Evans, as I mentioned. What are you've said that there's kind of mixed feelings on Evans. Obviously achieved some big things with well backed in his time there. What was your personal sort of memory of his first stint?
It was just chaos, just beautiful footballing chaos. I can't remember, it was 60 players signed, or 90 or something like that in 2.5 seasons. But the loan system was different back then, to be fair. It was that the loan window was open year round. So, but yeah, he knows how to play the fans. He's that. I've never had a manager better than him at playing the fans. Sounds like but he's just amazing at it. After the game, you look at Stevenage where he does the things to the crowd. He's perfect at that. I don't think there's anybody better in the Football League at that side of it, to be honest with you. He's amazing. But then when you get to the Championship, he has his limitations. But those League One and League Two promotions, there was just so much happening at times. It wasn't all perfect by any means, but there was always something happening at the football club. So from a fan point of view, it's good, especially from what we've been through. It's something to look forward to next season. There's always going to be something happening next season. The football is entertaining. I think it's entertaining. It's the kind of football we as Rotherham fans quite like. It's maybe it is direct, but it's always on the front foot, constantly on the front foot, trying to put pressure on the opposition, balls into the box. And I like that style. That's what Rotherham fans have kind of grown up on over the last 20 years, 25 years, or whatever it's been. So from that kind of thing, it does marry up quite well. But that Championship has been a stumbling block for him.
Yeah. You like your upper Ashton football year lot, don't you? In terms of the goalkeeping position, you've brought in Cameron Dawson, who, do you know what? I actually think he was a little bit underrated at Sheffield Wednesday. Had his sort of question marks, but I thought he was actually instrumental at times in their playoff victory in 2023. I thought he was player of the year, or certainly excellent at Exeter in League Two in 21-22 as well. So for me, I think this is a good goalkeeper, certainly below the Championship. Happy to have him coming in to compete with Dylan Phillips. Yeah,
I think so. I think it's always Victor Jansen's a very, very difficult act to follow, because there's no guy similar to Victor Jansen that's available for Rotherham United or for anybody in League One, to be honest with you. Cam Dawson's solid. Like I say, sure, at Exeter they still think very, very highly of him. And I think for a goalkeeper, I'm not sure League One and League Two is that much different. I think with the Championship, when you're asking to play with your feet, and a bit different, I think that is different. But that for me, that's good. Obviously, like I say, it was crucial in the promotion campaign as well. He has played against us for Sheffield Wednesday and made some pretty bad mistakes. But that was 4 or 5 years ago. So I suspect he's now grown up a little bit and is a bit more mature. But that is sticking out for I think for a few Rotherham fans, that those mistakes that we all remember, they still assume it's the kind of the same guy. And I'm sure it isn't. And when he did the interview when he signed him, he looked really positive. He looked really happy. You often see these interviews when they just signed, they're just blank face and just he looked buzzing, looked really, really happy. And that's what we want to see. Again, we want to see players wanting to play for the shirt again, because we feel like we lost that. I think him and Phillips are maybe similar. So for me, going into the season, I'm not bothered. Whichever one plays, I'm kind of quite happy going forward, certainly for the level as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Dylan Phillips, I think, is going to be one of the better League One goalkeepers as well. So I think that's going to be a really intriguing area of competition, which is what you want. Now, formation-wise, I'm quite curious about this, Matt, because when Steve Evans was at Stevenage, his default was 5-3-2, although he did sometimes play the 4-4-2 diamond, which he also quite liked at Gillingham. I mean, I guess you're sort of just as much in the dark about formation as I am, because you've not really. I mean, what did he go to at the back end of last season?
He went back to proper Steve Evans. Went back to 4-4-2 for the last 3 games of the season. Okay. Classic. But he went back to basics, and that's what we needed. To be fair, like I say, he'll probably adapt that going forward, I would expect.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose if you look at it, the volume of strikers that you've currently got on your books, whether all of them are necessarily going to be at the club come the opening game. I think Josh Kayede's been linked with Grimsby, hasn't he? But I look at it, you got Andre Green, who could play up top. You got Jordan Hugill, you got Sam Nombe, you got Tom Eaves, you got Cyril McGuckin's a striker. Ayres is someone who's come through the academy, and you've got Jonson Clarke-Harris, the obvious one, as well. So lots of striking options there. So that would suggest to me that you're probably going to be looking at 2 up top.
I would have thought so. He likes the attacking players. Whether Jordan Hugill stays is a question, obviously, because I think he will think he's a Championship player, even though he didn't have a very good season. But he's the kind of player that if Steve Evans can get going, he's a proper Steve Evans player. He's the kind of guy that can have a really, really good time in League One. He can bully those defenders. He knows where the back of the net is. Because we'll be a top end team, he'll get the chances. So he'll be able to do that. Sam Nombe, it's a big season for Sam Nombe. He came with that big price tag last year. Didn't cut it, but I don't blame him. I kind of blame Matt Taylor for not playing him, and then it was got to change your manager, and then things get messy and what else. But if he doesn't perform this season, then I question where he goes from there. But that's time will tell. I'm not sure if they'll all stay, to be honest with you. Hugill might go. I like Tom Eaves, but I don't see him as a. If you're going to keep Hugill, do you keep Eaves as well? They're a bit samey, a little bit for me. And Andre Green, I like Andre Green, although he got injured 3 months into the season, he's so versatile. You can play either side of the wing, you can play up top. And again, I think he'll be another player that could have just a good time. The defenders aren't as good, so he can really kind of express himself at the top end of League One. Again, assuming he wants to stay, which hopefully he does.
Yeah, let's hope so. Cyril McGuckin, he had a few appearances off the bench, or he's certainly in the matchday squad quite a bit last season. Do you think it's going to be harder for him under a manager in Steve Evans, who probably, unlike Matt Taylor, is less inclined, I suppose, to give youngsters a chance? So even though it's a lower league, I'm actually wondering is Cyril McGuckin going to get loaned out?
I would have thought so. He spent the last half of the season at Dundalk, I think, or somewhere in Northern Ireland, which he needed. He stayed with the club and got those substitute appearances, but that was I think that was not good for his development. He just sat on the bench for most of the first half of the season, watching his team get beat up every week. I don't think that's good. He needed to go out on loan to ideally a League Two team or possibly a National League team. We've extended his contract. He was out of contract. The club decided to extend it, so they clearly see something there. I think he's still playing youth international under-21s for Northern Ireland. Yeah, they've got the Bristol Street Motors trophy, so obviously I suspect some appearances in there. But there's nothing to suggest that he will be in and around the first team this season. And like I said, Steve Evans is not the greatest a developer of youth players. It's just not his style, which is
Sure.
fair enough. So hopefully he gets a good loan, and then we can maybe see the season after, maybe.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, while we're on strikers, I'm curious how you're feeling about Jonson Clarke-Harris, because I totally get why the majority view is we're really excited about Jonson Clarke-Harris because he's a serial goal scorer. He's won promotions from this level before and a bit of a League One specialist. So I totally get why it feels like the marquee signing. My sort of slight reservation, though, is that for a Steve Evans side that's going to be very low possession, so we're looking at 40 to 45% in a lot of games, I would think, you're going to need a centre forward that's very aggressive against the ball. And I'm not sure that Jonson Clarke-Harris is going to do translate so well to a low possession side, because he's quite languid and he only tends to look interested when actually the ball's near him and he might get a chance. His hold-up play is quite good, but I'm not sure how he's quite going to fit in, especially the against the ball work.
Yeah, I completely agree. That's exactly how I see it. It's almost exactly the same. You know, it looks good. The numbers, you look at him and think, wow, they're amazing. But then you kind of sit back and look, right, well, Steve Evans, last time under Steve Evans, we were basically high press. Alex Ravello would run everything down up front, run and run and run. Agard or other players around him who can be lazier, I suppose, is how they play their game. But then who else is going to do the running? I don't think you're going to play Clarke-Harris and Hugill together, because again, I think they're too similar. I think you could say the same with Eves, they're again pretty similar. And then you're asking Nombe to go into another run, and I don't think that's Nombe's game. And I don't think that's fair on Nombe to kind of expect him to do that. He can do it, but I think you take away from everything else that he does.
Right.
So I am concerned, interested to see what Steve Evans does, because that for me that was a step away from where I thought we were going to go from kind of a semi-high press that we've seen in the past. But he's going to be a guy that Steve Evans likes the ball in the box, and there's not many players in League One that are better in the box than Jonson Clarke-Harris. Yeah. So we're going to have to kind of somebody else do the donkey work for him, like Ravel did for other players back in the day. Is somebody else going to have to work just so that Clarke-Harris can get 25 goals a season? Because if that happens, you will be at the right end of the table, won't you? I suppose.
Yes, yeah, I think that's a great point. I mean, I would think that Nombe could make a new sense of him, and I think he could do the running. Ideally, you'd want, if you're playing two up top, you'd want two strikers who do a lot of the running, like Evans' Stevenage side had. But so something I'm aware of, not necessarily a massive concern, but just sort of loosely aware of. But hopefully he can score the goals as well. So you brought in Joe Rafferty at right wing back, and again he's another one who's experienced at League One level, and who always tends to be played in the Championship before, and tends to be one of the better players at this level.
Absolutely. Obviously, we came in when Kyosa was here, so we thought they were going to vie for each other. Kyosa's obviously since left, so I think he will be the kind of main man in that position. Exciting, you look at him, obviously, Sean Wright came in as well. You've got two league winners that are coming in straight away. We're going to want to prove themselves again to maybe get a chance to actually play in the Championship next time around. But Rafi, I think it allows a bit of flexibility. He can play a standard right back kind of thing. He can play a right wing back as well. So we've got a bit of adaptability in there. We'll probably bring another right back, I would have thought as well, probably to help it, to support him. But Joe Rafferty was one of those you go, wow, okay, that's a bit of a statement signing, bearing in mind he's just won the league and been considered one of the best right backs in the league. That was Steve Evans talks every signing up, but that was one where you go, right, okay, I understand why Steve Evans is talking that one up. That's a pretty good signing, that one.
Yeah, certainly is. So centre backs, at the moment you've got Cam Humphreys, who I imagine you're feeling is going to be a key player for you this season if you can keep him fit.
100%. If Cam Humphreys stays fit, he'll be best centre back in the league. I can't speak high enough of him. I think if he hadn't had the 2 hamstring injuries in consecutive seasons, I think he would have nailed on gone. I think if I'm a Championship club looking at him, I'm not going to risk $1 million, $2 million, $3 million because of the hamstring injuries. So that will hopefully help us that he will then play the games. And I think because we'll be attacking more, not being so defensive, that might suit him because he's so good on the ball. It might allow him to step out of defence a little bit more and contribute a little bit that way, because he can do that, but he's just not been able to do it with how defensive we have to be in the Championship. But again, he's another one. If he stays with us, he'll have a great time in League One. He is such a good player. I can't speak highly. He is a championship player. He probably, if somebody came with that money, I think he'll go. But I'm not convinced they will. So if he stays, he'll be crucial to us this season. Absolutely crucial.
Yeah, hopefully you can keep hold of him. But Haki Godolphin was, I guess, a bit of a, probably wouldn't have, not many people before the season would have bet on Hakeem Godolphin being your most used centre half last season, and maybe being one of your better players in that position. Did he maybe surprise a few people last season?
Yeah, absolutely. He's one of those kind of guys that's really annoying that he just seems good at everything. You could probably put him in net and he'd do a pretty good job.
Yeah.
Him and Humphreys created a pretty decent relationship when they played with. He did it with Peltz and a few other players, which for not a natural centre back, that's quite impressive that he can form those relationships. Having said that, the first thing that Steve Evans did when he came in was put him back in centre midfield, and that's what we as fans have been kind of crying out for, because Hacks can do a job at centre back and he is really, really good. But that physical presence and that ability to score goals was something we really missed. So there was no attacking threat, which obviously made us even more defensive. So unless we get really, really desperate, I think Hacks will be kind of an attacking midfielder, which again is going to be. I want to be a defender trying to deal with Hakeem Godolphin going forward. So I think again he's going to be a massive player, hopefully.
Right. So when he gets going on those driving runs from midfield, do you feel like he can be a real threat?
Absolutely. Yeah, he can just drive. He's got that pace. He's one of those deceivingly quick players. You kind of watch him and you go, how did he get there so quickly? And he's not afraid of having a shot. His shots are generally really, really good. He's not one of those that's kind of high wire and handsome and 1 in 10 goes in. They are really, really there's something behind every single one of them. He was unlucky last time in League One under Paul One not to get more appearances. Obviously, we went up, so it didn't matter. But the Hakeem Godolphin under Matt Taylor in central midfield was, if he turns up in League One, he'll get 10 plus goals this season and probably a few more assists. He's so good at what he does. I think he's underrated.
Right. So that means that then, so if we're thinking Hakeem Godolphin, moves into midfield, then in terms of centre halves, you got Jamie McCart's transfer listed. You got Cam Humphreys. You've got Zach Jules, who you've signed from Exeter. You've got Sean Raggett, who you signed from Portsmouth. Excellent signing, I think. So I think you've got the basis there for a pretty good back three. But if we were to look at defensive depth, you're then going down to Jake Hull, who's I think had a few loans since coming through the academy, and then Douglas as well, who I think is another young centre half from the under-21s, but probably isn't going to feature much. So, I mean, if you're going to play a back three, you might need another couple of defenders, but certainly one more.
Absolutely, and I think that all those kind of players could play as a 3 or a 4. You know, we've got those players in there. He mentioned Zach Jules. I can't say I've seen Zach Jules play very much, but again, Steve Evans has talked him up to be a really exciting player. He's compared him to Kerry Arneson, who used to play for centre half for us, and any Rotherham fan knows that is a ringing endorsement because he was the
Icelander.
Yeah. He was one of the classiest and silkiest players we've ever had at centre half. So to compare him to that for Rotherham fans is kind of a big deal. So that puts a lot of pressure on him coming in there. Sean Raggett. We had him on loan briefly. He reminds me a bit of a Richard Wood. He'll put his head on the end of whatever he needs to put his head on the end of.
Yeah.
And you need that. In League One, those kind of players are priceless. I would always have Richard Wood should never left, but I would have always had a Richard Wood type in if I'm going to create a football team, because they lead by example. They'll drag everybody up by the laces if they're not doing it. And I think he's adaptable in terms of a 4 and a 2, and I think that and a 4 and a 3. Sorry. But yeah, you're right. I think we need depth in centre half is an area we need it, but I think that'll come. We're not dipped into the loan market yet. The loan market's not really open yet, is it? I suppose
no,
not really. So I think that'll come in that position and strengthen up. Well, Steve Evans won't waste. If there's somebody available, Steve Evans will go sign him. So
yes, of course, yeah. No, I agree with you. I think Sean Raggett is an absolutely outstanding capture. So I think you've done very well to get him. So yeah, I see him slotting in very nicely into the middle of the back three, because I think if it is a back three, because I feel like the benefit of that would be having wide centre halves either side of him. So you've got Cam Humphreys and Zach Jules possibly doing the 1v1s, and then Sean Raggett sort of heading balls out of the box and organising the people around him, very much like Richard Wood did in that 2021 season. Yeah, so that could be an interesting one to watch. But I think Raggett could do it in a 4 as well. So Cohen Bramall then, Matt. Again, I think if you keep him fit, I think he can be one of the best left backs or left wing backs in League One this season.
Yeah, Cohen Bramall's a funny one because he's got everything he needs to be a top player. He's the quickest man you will see on a football pitch, but he lacks. I sound really harsh. I think he lacks footballing intelligence. He does, or whether he's just not been coached properly or tactically told what to do. He seems to get confused when he's allowed to go forward and when he should go forward and when he should hold back. But again, I credit Steve Evans. When Steve Evans came in the last 3 games of the season, he simplified it, and Cohen Bramall just was then an attacking fullback, and he got 2 assists on the final day of the season against Cardiff. So I think Steve Evans will be good for a player like that because his talents are obvious. Like he says, he's such a good player, Cohen Bramall. He's got everything he needs. I just think he overthinks everything. It comes when he gets into the dangerous areas. His crossing can be way off because I think he just either tries nailing it too hard or whatever, and it can be really bad. But then again, last in the season, keep it simple, a nice, cool, calm ball, and he got a couple of assists from it. So I think if the right man's in charge of Cohen Bramall, I think he will be absolutely there as one of the top players. But you've got to make sure I kind of get that kind of feeling you need to make sure he understands his job 100%.
Yeah,
I know he gets something in front of him. It was better with Appiah in front of him. Or Appiah never could see him. It was better with a winger in front of him as well, which again Steve Evans loves an overlap. What he did last time with us. So again, that might feed into helping Cohen Bramall a bit more adventurous.
Okay, so that could be an interesting one because I do think that for Steve Evans' side, he's going to need to learn some of that defensive discipline. A bit unusual to be talking about sort of learning so much because he is coming into mid to late 20s now, but yeah, I think he's clearly got ability. He's clearly got the athleticism, but it's just about whether he can and whether he can fit into that sort of system. But Christier is one I'm curious about because I think at Wigan in the second half of the 22-23 season, he got some rave reviews for his performances. And I think he's someone who's performed well across Europe as well. So again, along with the Dauphin, is that somebody you're excited about for this season?
It is, yes, he is. I think he's a bit Marmite from a lot of fans think he was rubbish last season. A lot of fans thought he was amazing. He does the dirty stuff, he keeps the ball moving and things like that. But we brought Liam Kelly in, who from again not a massive Liam Kelly expert, but from my understanding, that's exactly what Liam Kelly does. There are rumours that Teehee is not massively happy. And again, these are only rumours, and I'm not going to say they've come from anywhere that's I would say is valid. But those rumours tend to come from somewhere a little bit, especially when you get relegated, and we spent a bit of money on last season. So if he stays and he's coached right, he'll be key because he is amazing at keeping the ball moving. He's limited in terms of passing range and shooting and things such as that, but that's fine. You got a Dauphin and Rathbone and other people to do that. Yeah. It's just about keeping things moving, especially when you're in possession and you're trying to break teams down. You need that kind of player to keep things moving and keep things kind of simple in that area of the pitch. So if he's happy to stay, then I think he'll have a good time in League One. But he's got to want it, and there's suggestions from Steve Evans that some players might not want it, and I do wonder if he's one of them.
Okay, has he come out and said that then, Steve Evans?
He's kind of intimated that if players say they don't want to be here, then it's goodbye. Okay. So I again, might be reading too much into it. When there's no problem in United, we read into everything too much sometimes. But it's something to keep an eye on, I would say. All I would say on that one.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So for now, he's part of the squad, so it has to be considered an option in midfield. I mean, I'm looking at it. You got Christier there. You got Ollie Rathbone. Really liked Ollie's honesty after you got relegated. You got Joe Powell signed from Burton. You got Sean McWilliam signed from Northampton, and Liam Kelly from Coventry. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4. You got 5 midfielders, and all of them, I would say, you put them right in the first team picture. Like they would all feel like if they're part of the squad, they would want to be part of the match day squad on the opening day, kind of thing. which makes me wonder. The only problem with the flat 4-4-2 is that it only incorporates two orthodox central midfielders, whereas you play a 5-3-2 or a 4-4-2 diamond, you'd be able to get more of those players in there.
Absolutely. What he did do last season when he went 4-4-2 it was almost four central midfielders. It was a really weird 4-4-2. But I think it was because needs must. We didn't have any players, so I think that's part of it. But you're right. Those signings do make me think we will go for a central three in the midfield, which I think works. If you just take the three that we were last season, Tiki to kind of sit in and make things simple, Ollie to do your running, and Hacks to be that real goal threat at the top end of the pitch. Obviously, you add in McWilliams, Powell, and Kelly into there as well. Then you've got real options in that area of the pitch. I can't see, but having said that, I can't see Steve Evans not signing another central midfielder between now and the end of August.
Really?
Because there'll be good ones that suddenly become available. I'm sure there'll be a great young loanee that's available somewhere. So I just can't see him not finding someone that's available. Hacks, Dauphin and Rathbone, we have extended their contracts by a year, but only by a year. So I wonder if one of those may leave. That's just me looking at there's 1 year left on the contract and wondering what's going to happen next.
Yeah.
But if that was the midfield going into the season, I'd be very happy. I think that's a very, very good League One midfield. Whichever three play, I think it's an excellent midfield in League One. But we're still early in the window. There's going to be some good midfielders become available for one reason or another. So, and Steve Evans loves a signing. So,
yeah, he certainly does. Ollie Rathbone, you mentioned he's only extended his contract for another year, but I also felt like he's one of those people that really cares about the club and lives and breathes it. And I liked how transparent he was after the defeat to Plymouth Argyle that confirmed your relegation, because it feels like it shows he cares. And I know that's not everything, but I've always thought of Ollie Rathbone as a real team player, and I think that if he plays in maybe a more advanced midfield role, I think in that pressing role with the way that Steve Evans likes to play, I think that could make a big difference in terms of we talk about aggression against the ball, like with Jonson Clarke-Harris. I think Ollie Rathbone in a more advanced midfield role could often help with that.
Absolutely, yeah. You compare to it last time Steve Evans was here, he's got the Lee Frecklingtons about him. He'll just run and run and run. I think Freck was better technically than Rathbone, but there's certainly a comparison to be had, which tells me that Steve Evans, that's the kind of player that Steve Evans will like. Rathbone had a poor season last season, but I don't think that was his fault. I think when Leam Richardson came in, everything became so rigid and must not get battered every week that you're then holding Rathbone back. And if you're going to hold Rathbone back, you're taking away what's actually good about his game. And again, when Steve Evans come in, he's just took the reins off, and Ollie Rathbone's best 3 games of the season were probably the last 3 games. So I think somebody like Rathbone, I think you've got to keep his game basically simple. We want you to press. We want you to put pressure on the opposition when we're without the ball. Because he can run for 90 minutes, that lad. He's just a joy to watch. You just set him off and off he goes, and that allows everybody else in the team. It takes pressure off everybody else as well. But then it also builds up the press from us as well. I feel like Steve Evans and Ollie Rathbone is a match made in heaven in terms of management and a midfielder. Again, assuming he's happy to stay, because if he's not going to sign a new contract long term, you've got to cash in, because he's got value on him, Rathbone. And we as a club need to be better at that, because we've been quite poor in the past.
What do you think it's going to take for Rotherham to become better at handling contracts and getting the maximum value for their players?
I don't know. That's the question, and that's something that we didn't really get answered to the fans forum last night. Is how do we stop these mistakes happening? Barlas left for less than £1 million. Chio when he went for free. Victor's gone for less than £1 million because of release clause in his contract. This is how many millions of pounds left on the floor just from those 3 transfers. There's millions and millions worth of pounds with a player, and for a club like us who haven't got a billionaire owner, those millions and millions of pounds are massive. Imagine what we could have done with another £5 million, £6 million under Paul Warne, for example. So it's crucial that they get this sorted. Do I think they're going to sort it? No, I don't, because I've seen nothing to suggest that they will. There's been no kind of admission of that it was wrong. It was a lot of blame put on Matt Taylor for a lot of things last night, which wasn't ideal. But we're a football club and you've got to learn. And if we aren't going to learn, we're going to keep yo-yoing. That's where we're going to be. If you don't start, I know Peterborough don't get as many promotions as us, but we've got to look at their model a little bit and be really aggressive in terms of sales. You know, if we want to sell players, you sell them at the right time for the right price. You don't let them run the contract down and then they're worth no money in the January or whatever. I'd like to see us being more aggressive, but I won't be holding my breath.
No. Do you know? Do you know if Tony Stewart's son? I don't know if you've been able to come across him at all, or have any sort of. Do you think he is very much cut from the same cloth and it be the same thing, or do you think he's likely to have his own ideas? You know, if this is very much throwing it forward to the future.
Yeah.
Do you think he'd have his own ideas of how to run things?
I wouldn't have thought so, and I guess not really come across him much, to be honest with you. He's kind of, I think he is involved, but I think he's I think he's officially vice chairman. I think he has got a title, right. But he's very much behind the scenes. Whereas Tony Stewart is very much the man in front of the camera. Like we saw with his interview on Sky with the Leeds game, he likes to be in front of the camera. He's a very eccentric man, but he's a wealthy man. You know, why would you not be? Whereas I get the impression, and this might be wrong, I get the impression that his son's a bit more reserved.
Right.
Again, that might be just because of how Tony Stewart is. But I get the feeling he's a bit more reserved about it, which might work in the long run. When we changed to the director of football model, which lasted about 2 months, I felt like that was a good step. I thought we become a bit more joined up thinking, and then Tony come and rip that up. So maybe that will be something that changed, but I don't know. Again, I won't put money on it either way, to be honest with you.
Yeah, that makes sense. In terms of expectations for this season, then, Matt, would it be fair for me to say that a top 6 finish is the expectation for Rotherham United this season, or that the expectation is to at least challenge for the top 6?
The expectation is challenged because Steve Evans said that. Steve Evans has said that we expect to be challenging at the right end of the table. So again, that builds immediate pressure on himself, which again, Steve Evans is big enough and strong enough to try and take the pressure that he builds upon himself. We haven't spent any money yet, so from a transfer point of view, there's no pressure yet, because we all knew as Rotherham fans, we knew these transfers. I know for a lot of fans, they look at Rotherham United and go, bloody hell, they've signed all these players. We know that this is normal. We know we had to do this. So there's no pressure yet from that side of things to go and romp the league, although we laugh and joke about winning the league because of these players. I don't think there's realistic expectation that we're going to be. You look at what Birmingham have reported to be spending this summer. You look at what Huddersfield are doing. I think Alfie May is coming in for a decent chunk of money. It's going to be a tough league. There's probably 12 teams that will be sitting here going, top 6 this year for us.
Yeah, and even more than that, possibly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's no. When Sunderland went down here and Ipswich were down here on Wednesday, it looked daunting. But this is a tougher league for me. This is a bunch of teams who are basically well run.
Yeah.
They're going to get it right. And if Birmingham get it right with that money, and if Huddersfield get it right with that money, they're going to be potentially running away with it. So it's going to be very, very tough.
Yeah, certainly is. So if we're going to say to challenge in some form is the expectation, then we've got to look at a best 11 that's capable of doing that. So I'd kind of like to pick your brains on this. I'm kind of going to look at how close you are to having a best 11 that, let's say, can finish in the top 6. So I think you've got a good enough goalkeeper for a top 6 finish. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. Either one of them, to be fair with you. I'm happy with either one of those. I think both, at worst, they're solid. That's at worst.
Okay. So I think you've got a good enough right back or right wing back, as we've talked about with Joe Rafferty. Absolutely. I know you're a massive fan of Cam Humphreys, as we spoke about earlier, so that's a definite star for him. And then in terms of other centre-backs, I think Sean Raggett is good enough. And I'm not 100% sure on Zach Jules, so I actually would like to see another left-footed centre-half come in, possibly.
Absolutely.
So that would help. I would probably go for a yes for Cohen Bramall. Would you go along with that?
Yeah, I go yes, but with an asterisk that it depends on him. It depends on how the management deal with him. I think if again with the right management, he's one of the best players in the league, but it's got to work out. There's a lot. I think it's with other players. It's a big season for Cohen Bramall. If he doesn't have a good season this season, kind of when is he going to have a good season in League One? This is a really big year for him at his age as well, mid to late 20s. I think it's a massive year for him.
Okay. Yeah, I think he's got a huge amount of. I think he's got a high ceiling and probably a low floor.
Yes,
But if he gets his high ceiling, then he's easily good enough.
completely
I
agree.
wanted to ask you what your midfield combination would be. Let's say, I mean, I don't know how many midfielders there'll be.
Mm,
I mean, we've got 4 defenders there. So if it's a back 4 and then say 4 midfielders in whatever combination,
mm.
what would you be thinking there?
Hacks would be number one. Hacks would want to be the first names on the team sheet, to be honest with you.
Okay.
I think he offers you dynamism,
Yeah.
aggression, everything that comes with it. Hacks will be on there as well.
Okay.
I don't know how you'd pick just another one, to be honest with you. If you're going to pick another,
Rathbone, I think definitely is a definite for me.
and then the third one's going to be between Kelly and Teehee. I will go Teehee just because I've seen him, I've seen him more, and I know what he possibly can do.
Yeah.
But the way that Steve Evans has talked about Liam Kelly, I think it will probably be Liam Kelly.
Yes, I'm a little bit apprehensive about Liam Kelly because I think he's a great character, first of all, very tenacious. But I'm also aware that once a player gets to 35, physically they can decline, and Liam Kelly's never been a particularly great technical player either. So I've got a bit of a worry that if Steve Evans puts too much faith in Liam Kelly, actually he's not going to quite be physically and technically at the level that you're going to need.
Yeah, that makes sense. Steve Evans just talked him up as a similar style to Teehee, which is obviously different, possibly. But Steve Evans is his favourites with every club. He has certain players he absolutely adores, and he'll treat him like a son. So it'll be interesting to see how that fits in. But like I say, he seems like a great character. So even if he doesn't play loads of games, I think he'll be a good guy to have around as well.
Yeah, I think from a character point of view, that might have been a big factor. I still think Sean McWilliams and Joe Powell, I think they've done well for Northampton and Burton respectively, but I'm not necessarily willing to put my house on them being top 6 midfielders at this level. So I'd probably leave those. And then I would say, I think I'd go with a yes for Nombe. Would you go for a yes for Nombe?
Probably yes. Obviously, you've probably seen him in League One more than me. I've also seen him in the Championship, which I think was a step too far. But was it 17 goals in just over a season at Exeter?
That's a pretty good return. Around under Carlisle, he actually looked quite bright. So he's had 1 or 2 good performances, I would say.
Yeah. And we're probably going to create more chances than Exeter did as well. So from that point, he'll get more chances. It's got a stunning goal last game of the season as well. The spells and sparks of an excellent striker there, but I just think he was let down. He's one of many players that were let down last season by the rest of the team. So I'm really, really excited to see what he can do this season. He's one of them. We're really looking forward to in League One.
Okay, and then I would probably go for a caveated star next to Jonson Clarke-Harris because I don't think you can say he's not good enough. But I think there is a sort of a dynamic that you've got to kind of work around with fitting him in. So that would leave us with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we've got 9 players there who we think are good enough for a top 6 starting 11. So that's quite a good position to be in, I would say. But it actually probably you do wonder. Actually, maybe you're right about another midfielder coming in because you've got lots of midfielders, but you could also maybe have that doubt about whether some of the other, whether the other options are quite at the level.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, they're going to talk about the fans forum that the transfer market. Rob Scott, the director of football recruitment, said that the transfer market in general is dead at the minute. So we're waiting. I suspect the financial fair play in the Premier League's playing its part.
Yeah.
So when teams in the Premier League really start spending the money, the Championship clubs will let players out. There is going to be some really good players available, whether it's midfielders, centre halves, whatever. There's going to be some really good players that suddenly become available, as always happens in the transfer window. This is not unique to this summer. And if there is a good player available, that one of the good things from a fan and maybe a bad thing for a player is that Steve Evans is cutthroat. If he sees somebody that's better, that new guy's coming in. Even if you've just signed this summer, he'll still farm you out at the end of this window or in January because it's what's best for the team. And that's brutal. But at the end of the day, you've got to be like that in football to a certain extent.
Yeah, absolutely. It's certainly a ruthless business, isn't it?
Mm.
So I think based on what we've discussed there, in terms of a best 11, you're pretty close to having a top six side on paper. We don't know how it's quite going to come together on the pitch. So with that in mind, Matt, what are the reasons to believe that? What's the biggest reason to believe for you that your ambitions are going to be realised this season?
Steve Evans' record at this level, plus those quality players that we've got in there. We know Steve Evans can build a team. So if you look at his history, there is multiple reasons. He got us double promotion. He got Steve Evans promoted from League Two. He got them in an incredible position in League One. He was very close to securing a playoff berth for them at one point. So he's got all the credentials that you could possibly need to say that this is the man to do it. And that's the players in there. There's some players in there that won't be out of place in the Championship. There's not all of them, but there's certainly some in there. So the quality is there. It's just Stevens has got to unlock it, and he's pretty good at that normally.
Certainly is. What's the biggest reason for doubt?
It's also the Steve Evans as well. Steve Evans, Peterborough didn't work out. Gillingham, I know there was lots of issues behind the scenes at Gillingham, but that didn't quite work out.
Well, Gillingham in his first two full seasons, he got them to top half finishes when they still had their old owner. So they've since had a takeover that's put them in a much better position, whereas they still had Paul Scally as owner, very low budget, not in a great position structurally. So top half finishes in League One, I think, was quite a good achievement. And then in the last season, it just kind of fell apart a little bit.
Yeah, it did. But Steve Evans the way Steve Evans does is old school. It's quite unique, I suppose, in modern day football. It's, like I mentioned at the start about his previous reign, there's chaos. There's always chaos. If you talk to any of his previous players that were around him, there was always something going off at the training ground, whether it was shouting at the chef or arguing with one of the players. There was always something going off, and that's not all players can deal with that. Especially maybe the modern day players.
Yeah,
certainly. So that is if the players he's brought in can't deal with Steve Evans, then we're potentially going to struggle. But then he'll just farm them out. He'll just get rid of them, and they're all on relatively short-term contracts, so that probably helps with that as well. So he is our strength, but he's also potentially our weakness, Steve Evans.
Interesting. Well, hopefully it works out a net positive this season. And then, so too early for a prediction because a lot can change between now and the start of the season. But give me a number between 1 and 10 to denote your level of optimism for the season ahead.
Before the fans from last night, I'd probably gone a 7 or 8. But I would go. So I'll go higher. I'll go 6.
6. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, bear in mind last season it was probably a -5. That's a really, really good uptake from where we were.
Yeah.
But there's still question marks on who's coming in and whatnot. But yeah, I think once the fine-tune, as Steve Evans called it, fine-tuning comes in the next month or 2 months, and I think that'll probably rise, to be honest with you. But at the minute, it's probably a 6.
6 out of 10. Okay, well, very interesting. Well, listen, Rotherham United have certainly added a bit of quality to their squad in the early stage of the window, and they've put themselves in a pretty good position to try and challenge. Let's see if that comes together on the pitch. Matt, thanks so much for your insight. It's been great to get your thoughts on the Millers. Everyone go get subscribed to the New York Talk podcast on Rotherham United. Subscribe to EFL Debate on YouTube and on Spotify. Give us a review, drop us a comment, let me know what you think Rotherham are going to do this season, and we'll see you again very soon.